Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Chapter 14, which is Lord Brahma's prayers to Lord Krishna. And today we have a very sweet verse, which is text 58. Samashitaye padapallavam plavam Samashitaye padapallavam plavam Mahatpadam punyam yasho murare Mahatpadam punyam yasho murare Bamburi vatsa param 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 Bamburi vatsa param 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 yati padam natesham Param param yati padam natesham Samashitaye padapallava plavam Samashitaye padapallava plavam Mahatpadam punya yasho murare Mahatpadam punya yasho murare Bamburi vatsa param 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 Bamburi vatsa param 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 yati padam natesham Param param yati padam natesham
Samashitaye padapallava plavam
Samashitaye padapallava plavam
Mahatpadam punya yasho murare
Mahatpadam punya yasho murare
Bambudir vatsa padam param padam
Bamburi vatsa param param padam
Padam padam yad vipadam natesham
Param param yati padam natesham Samashitaye padapallava plavam Samashitaye padapallava plavam Mahatpadam punya yasho murare Mahatpadam punya yasho murare Bamburi vatsa padam param padam Bamburi vatsa param param padam
Samashitaye Varapalavaklavam Mahapalam Punya Yashomurare Vambudevatsa Padam Param Param Vambudevatsa Padam Param Param Padam Yadvipadam Natesham Param Param Yadvipadam Natesham Samashitaye Varapalavaklavam
Samashitaye Varapalavaklavam
Mahapalam Punya Yashomurare
Mahapalam Punya Yashomurare
Bhavambudevatsa Param Param Param
Bhavambudevatsa Param Param Param
Param Param Yavipadam Natesam
Param Param Yavipadam Natesham
Samashitaye Varapalavaklavam
Samashitaye Varapalavaklavam
Mahapalam Punya Yashomurare
Mahapalam Punya Yashomurare
Bhavambudevatsa Param Param Param
Bhavambudevatsa Param Param Param
Param Param Yavipadam Natesham
Param Param Yavipadam Natesham
Alright, let's do the word for word all together. Samashita, having taken shelter of, yea, those who, pada of the feet, palava, like flower buds, lavam, which are gold, mahat, of the total material creation, or of the great souls, padam, the shelter, punya, supremely pious, yasha, whose fame, murare, of the enemy of demon mura, baba, of material existence, amuli, the ocean, vasaparam, the thundering of the cow, param param, the supreme lord, Vaikuntha, param param, at every step, yat, where, vibram, of material mysteries, none, tesham, for them. Translation. Let's say this all together.
For
For those who have accepted the abode of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of cosmic manifestation, and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the poor and human, the ocean of material worlds is like water containing the gospel of Krishna. Their goal is Param Param Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material diseases, not the place where there is danger at every step. Jai. Who would like to read the report?
This translation is taken from Srila Prabhupada's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, text 51. According to Srila Sridhara Swami, this verse summarizes the knowledge presented in the section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Krishna's lotus feet are described as palava, flower buds, because they are most tender and of a pinkish hue. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami, the word palava also indicates that Lord Krishna's lotus feet are just like desire trees, which can fulfill all the desires of the Lord's pure devotees. Even exalted devotees like Sri Narada, who are themselves the great shelter for the conditioned souls in this universe, personally take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna. Thus it is natural that when Lord Krishna manifested himself as all the young boys and calves of Vrindavan, their parents were more attracted to them than previously. Lord Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure, and being all attractive, the ultimate object of everyone's love.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this verse, as you probably noticed when we were reciting it, is very poetic. There's a lot of literary embellishments in it, and Lord Brahma is known as the original poet. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kabaye. So Adi Kabaye means the original poet, Adi Kavi. And Brahma speaking these verses after this whole episode of him basically messing up and having doubts about whether Krishna is really the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then trying to test him to find out, and then Krishna, just blowing him away by passing the test with flying colors and manifesting himself. as all the different cowherd boys and all the different cows, and remaining like that for a whole year, and all these pastimes going on. So of course on one side it was enacted by Krishna's sweet will, by his Yogamaya, his Lila Shakti potencies, but also it's instructive because Lord Brahma is he's the first personality, he's the first acharya in our disciplic succession, which is the Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya, Sampradaya. It's a chain of disciplic succession coming from Krishna and going next to Lord Brahma, and to Narada, then Vyas, and all the way down through to Jagannath Babaji, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaura Das Babaji, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, and then Srila Prabhupada's disciples who are our gurus, and the chain continues like that. So Brahma is also showing us the example of what to do when we offend a great personality, because he basically offended Krishna. And so now he's falling down at the lotus feet of the Lord, and he's begging for forgiveness, and he's glorifying the Lord in all these verses. So these Brahma's prayers to Lord Krishna are mainly glorifications. It's not that he's praying for something so much, but he's just offering glorifications. So all the doubts that he had in the beginning about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's confirming here that now I learned my lesson. So he's glorifying us. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, this material nature, you are the source, the original source of everything, and all these things. So he's really trying to make up for all of this kind of foolishness by showing that, yeah, now I understand. Now there's no doubt in my mind about your supremacy. So this is one of those prayers, and it's particularly very poetic from beginning to end, really. In the first line, we have this really nice phrase, Padapallava Plavam. So first of all, I mean, any Sanskrit verse has rhythm and meter. We chant it like that. But this, if any of you are familiar with poetry, if you've studied poetry, so this has what we call alliteration. That's the repetition of the first letter. Padapallava Plavam. And also the consonants within the words. There's a lot of L's and M's and V's. Padapallava Plavam. And it creates like a really nice sound. You just want to say it again and again. It's so resonant. And the meaning also is very poetic because it's this really beautiful imagery. Because pallava, as it's explained here in the purport, the Sridhar Swami comments, Sridhar Swami translates that as flower buds. So Srila Prabhupada stated that like flower buds. So if you think of a flower bud, it's not opened yet. It's just this little flower bud, and he says that it has a pinkish hue. So it's like a pinkish lotus flower that hasn't opened yet. So that has a lot of connotations. Like words are, in poetry, words are chosen for the connotations that they give. So when you compare something to that thing, then all the connotations that go with that thing that you're comparing it to also reflect over onto the person that is being compared to it. So what are some of the connotations or the thoughts or the mood or the ideas that pop into your mind in relation to flower buds?
Fresh.
Okay, fresh. You don't need the mic, I'll just repeat that. Tender. Paula?
I would say it's like the start, or I guess the start of something beautiful.
Okay, so the start of something that's going to be new and beautiful. Max?
Yeah, kind of along that lines of like ever blooming, like on the process of becoming more and more beautiful.
Okay, so it's like beauty that's unfolding into something greater than it's already beautiful, and it's going to unfold into greater beauty. Fresh, yeah, fresh and new, like Krishna's ever fresh, Navayoganam, right? He's ever youthful, budding youth. Sometimes they describe it like that. Haley?
Maybe vulnerability.
Vulnerability? Because it's tender, because of its tenderness?
Yeah, because
Yeah, so it's like soft. You know, Krishna, even though Krishna is the strongest personality in the world, but at the same time his body is very soft. You know, you don't see him with like all these big like, you know, muscles and, you know, like six-pack abs. You know, he's got this soft little belly. And, you know, he's really tender and delicate. What else? Anything else?
I just really like the imagery that comes along. Like when I hear that word, it's like I can see the lotus moving. It's like I can see it going from this to
Yeah. Yeah, so with Krishna there's this, Krishna's personality is like that. He's always fresh, you know, in his pastimes, so although he repeats his pastimes, but they're always new, they're always fresh. And when we read about Krishna, when we read, you know, even Bhagavad Gita, which is philosophical, every time it's always fresh, it's always new, we always get something out of it that wasn't there before. And in that way it's always opening, it's never like fully bloomed and dying, you know, it's always just going to open more and going to open more. And the more we go into it, the more it opens up for us.
So we can have the microphone.
What's that? It's not good.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so, and also when we come to Krishna consciousness and we take shelter of those lotus feet, which are like flower buds, then our lives also expand. You know, it's like starting a new life. It's like your life is kind of like in this budding stage and it's about to open and it's gradually, you know, opening and your heart is opening and your love is, you know, beginning to unfold and manifest itself in a gradual way, just like a flower bud opens. So all these connotations are there with Krishna and taking shelter of one who takes shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. So it's very beautiful. And then Sanatana Goswami, he explains Pallava as that they're just like desire trees, because it's this organic thing, you know, like a part of a plant. So Pallava, it means flower bud, it can also mean twig, it can also mean a sprout. So all these are kind of like, you know, words that are connected with plants and trees. So Sanatana Goswami interprets it as a desire tree. So Krishna's lotus feet are desire trees. Kalpa Taru. In the spiritual world, they have these trees that are called Kalpa Vriksha trees that are different from the trees in this world. So in this world, you have say an apple tree, it's going to give you only apples. If you have an orange tree, it's going to give you only oranges. But in the spiritual world, Kalpa Vriksha trees are wish-fulfilling trees, that when you sit under that tree, whatever you desire, the tree will give you. If you want mangoes, it gives you mangoes. If you want bananas, it gives you bananas. If you want samosas, it gives you samosas.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Whatever you want manifests under that with that tree. So Krishna's lotus feet are like desire trees. And then when we take shelter of Krishna, all of our heart's desires become fulfilled. So our material desires are arising from deeper desires. They're really just kind of like the tip of the iceberg. So whatever we want materially, if you want a thing, it's because you're thinking that it's going to be happy. It's going to make you happy. So what we really want is happiness. And if you're attracted to a person, it's because you want to have a relationship with that person, because you want to have a loving relationship. So what we really want is love. So all of these like the roots of all of our desires, both spiritual and material, are all basically stemming from our desire for love, for happiness, for shelter, like that. And that's really the source of all those things is Krishna's lotus feet, is taking shelter of Krishna. So in that way, all of our desires are fulfilled. And just like from the roots, all of these branches come. So from this root needs, the core needs of the soul, which expand in different varieties of ways, everything is satisfied by watering the root of the tree, which is Krishna. So that's Pallava. And then Plavam. So Pada, Pallavam, Plavam. So his feet are like lotus flower buds or like desire trees. And they're also Plavam. Plavam means a boat. So boat is significant because later on in the verse, the word Bhavambudir is there. So Bhavambudir means the ocean of material existence. Bhava means material existence, repeated cycle of repeated birth and death. And Ambura means an ocean. So this situation that we're in, of material existence, the cycle of repeated birth and death, it's just so big, it's vast, we can't see the end of it, and yet we need to cross it. So there's no way that we can swim across by our own power. The only hope is to get on the boat, which is the lotus feet of Krishna. So taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, which is Padapalavam Plavam, suitable boat, then we can cross over the ocean of material existence. So then the next thing is, where did my page go? Mahatpadam. So Mahatpadam, this is also very poetic because the word Mahat is like a word that has, the same word has different meanings. And both of those meanings apply here. So it adds a lot of depth to it. So Mahat, it's a that kind of word is called a homonym, right? Same word has two meanings. Anyways, so, and Prabhupada, in his word-for-word translation, he says, of the total material creation or of the great souls. So it could be Mahat, as in Mahat Tattva, the total material creation, or it could be Mahat, as in Mahatma, great souls. So in either case, Krishna's lotus feet are the shelter of both. So they're the shelter of the whole creation, of the whole material existence, because everything is resting on him, as pearls are strung on a thread, as he says in the Bhagavad Gita. And they're also the shelter of the great souls, the Mahatmas. So those great devotees who take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And then Punya Yasho. So the next thing describing Krishna is Punya Yasho. And this word Punya means virtuous, pure, holy, pious, all of these good things. And Yasho means fame. So Krishna is famous for his virtuousness, for being so holy and pure and purifying. So not only is he pure, but whatever touches him becomes purified. Not only is he virtuous, but whoever comes in contact with him and takes shelter of him becomes virtuous. And any activities or thoughts in relation to him are just automatically pious and holy and sacred and good. So this is Punya Yasho. And this word Punya, because when we talk about Krishna, it's not only Krishna, but it's also Krishna's name, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's devotees, Krishna's dham, his holy places of pilgrimage which are associated with Krishna, and also topics related to Krishna. So all these things are also described in the scriptures as punya. For example, in the first canto, there's Shringvata Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyanta Soya Vadrani, Vidimati Surich Satam. So Punya Shravana Kirtana, that is topics of Krishna, hearing and chanting about Krishna, or the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, explaining it to others, chanting the holy names. These are all punya. They're pious and they're pure, and they will purify us and everybody who hears them. And also, devotees of the Lord are described as punya tirtha. In the previous verse, the one I just quoted, Shrimata Swakata Krishna, that was 1:217, and 1:216 is Shu Shu Sho Shraddhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. So he says that by rendering service to great devotees who are completely free from vice, great service is done, because by such service one gains an affinity for hearing the topics of Vasudeva. So there, the devotees are called Punya Tirtha, which means, Tirtha means a holy place. So the devotees are Punya Tirthas. They're these pure, virtuous, holy places of pilgrimage personified. They're walking holy places, which can purify you. So, this is a Punya. So Krishna is Punya Yasho. He's famous for being supremely pious and pure and purifying. Then, the next thing here is Murari. So Murari means Krishna. Mura is a demon, name of a demon, the Mura demon. This demon was a friend of Bhaumasura, who kidnapped all of the 16,000 princesses and kept them, for in his possession, to want to enjoy them. But these princesses were all devotees of Krishna. So while they were in captive, they were just praying to Krishna, please save us, please save us. And finally Krishna went there, and so Bhaumasura was the person who kidnapped them, but Mura was his general. He was like a close friend and assistant of Bhaumasura. So he was like party to the crime basically. And so he was involved in. And when Krishna went there to try to kidnap the princesses, Mura was the first person who, opposed him, tried to block him from doing that. So he got killed. And then Bhaumasura also got killed, and Krishna rescued all the 16,000 princesses and married them all. So that's how Krishna ended up with 16,108 wives. 16,000 came from there. So this Mura, Ara means the enemy. So Ari, Mura, Ari, Murari. And Krishna is the enemy of the demon Mura. And so this is also a very nice quality of Krishna, because not only does he kill the external demons, but he also kills the internal demons. So all of our anarthas, all of our those yucky things in there, like lust and greed and envy and just madness, delusion. Krishna, he removes all of those things from the heart. And that's what the previous verse that I quoted says, Shrinvata Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantasto Hyapadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. That Krishna is situated within the hearts of all the devotees, and he cleanses the desires for material enjoyment from our hearts. From the hearts of those who have developed the urge to hear his messages. So all of you somehow developed the urge to hear the messages of Krishna because you're sitting here. So Krishna's, through this hearing process, Krishna's removing the dirt from our hearts. He's killing those internal demons that disturb us and block the path of bhakti. Just like those princesses, they were devotees of Krishna, but they were temporarily locked up, so they couldn't, serve Krishna. So our anarthas, they also basically block us. They kind of put us in a space where we're unable to serve Krishna purely. And so Krishna kills those. He gets those out of the way, and so that we can be reunited with Krishna in a pure, transcendental, loving, devotional service relationship. So that's Murari. And then we have Bhavambudir, Vatsa Param Param Param. So Bhavambudir is that ocean of material existence that we already talked about. And he's saying that for those who take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, then that ocean of material existence becomes Vatsa Padam. It becomes, Vatsa means a calf. And it becomes the size of the water, of the amount of water that's contained in the hoofprint of a calf. So, let's see, before, and then the last line is Padam Padam Yat Vipadam Natesham. So, the last line is describing the qualities of this ocean of material existence, that it's danger at every step. So, Padam Padam here means that step by step, every step that we take, there's Vipadam, there's danger, there's calamities or material miseries at every step of life, every stage, every turn. There is some cause of distress in our lives in the material world. And so he's saying that for people who take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, their destination is not this place. It's not this place where there's misery at every step. Rather, it's Parampadam. It's the transcendental abode, which is Vaikuntha, which is, Kunta means anxiety, and Vai means without. So Vaikuntha means that there's no anxiety. So he's contrasting the situation of material existence, which is Kunta, which is full of kuntas, full of miseries and anxieties, to the transcendental abode, which is the destination of people who take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, where there's no anxieties. So, where is it going? Yeah, okay, so then let's just read, because in the purport, it's mentioned that, Srila Prabhupada mentions that this is the disciples of Prabhupada, that Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse in Bhagavad Gita 2:51. So I'm going to read here from Prabhupada's purport there. So this is in relation to Bhavam Buddhir and Param Param Yatvi Param Natesham. Prabhupada writes, out of ignorance only less intelligent persons try to adjust the situation of material life by fruitive activities, thinking that the resultant actions will make them happy. They do not know that no kind of material body anywhere within the universe can give life without miseries. The miseries of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease, are present everywhere within the material world. So, yeah, sometimes we're thinking that, oh, yeah, my life is not so great, but if I just, get this, if I just do this, if I just move there, then it's going to be better, right? If I get enough money, if I get the right job, if I'm with the right people, if I live in the right place, if I get a better house, or whatever, if my health becomes better, or, and then even thinking further ahead, people are thinking if I'm born in a better body, okay, I don't like being in this body, but I'll take birth again and I'll have a good body and then I'll be able to really enjoy life. My life will be great. Always, yeah, so it's always some future situation where I'll be happy. And then, but Prabhupada's saying no. No kind of material body anywhere within the universe can give life without miseries, because that's just the nature of the material world. Even in the heavenly planets, there's anxiety. They're always worried that the demons are going to attack. But one who understands his real constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord, and thus knows the position of the personality of Godhead, engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Consequently, he becomes qualified to enter into the Vaikuntha planets, where there is neither material miserable life nor the influence of time and death. So, Vaikuntha, there are no miseries, there's no influence of time, which means that you don't get old, you don't die, you don't lose anything because nothing is destroyed. Everything is just eternally there and nice and without any miseries or anxieties. So that's, Prabhupada speaks nicely about that contrast. So now I want to ask you a question. How is it that this ocean of material existence shrinks to the size of the water in a cat's footprint for those who take shelter of Krishna? Max.
What just popped in my mind was, I think it was like the Vavadadev, like his foot gets so big that comparably the material ocean is just a tiny little footprint. So
Does that mean we also get long legs? Paula?
I was thinking that once you come into Krishna consciousness, you just open up your world of like reality. So you just step into so much more, and then everything else that you've known is just
It's just what? Like insignificant?
like you don't even want to go back.
Okay, so all of those things that were very big and very important, and they shrink. All the things that you thought you wanted, your goals of life in life, they all appear so small and insignificant. They don't disturb you anymore. So, okay, good. Ananya?
It reminded me of Krishna when he swallowed the forest fire. It was like big, but he was able to make it small. So I feel like he would do the same for us.
Alright, so Krishna is Yogeshwara, he's the master of mystic power. So he can make the biggest thing become the smallest thing. Yeah? He can make our distance that we need to cross short too. Not that our legs have to become long, but yeah, he can increase his size and he can also make other things shrink. Nissan?
But Max said, like, once their feet became so big, so the boat becomes so big. So if this is what you have to cross, the boat's like as big as the ocean. So, I mean, it's nothing that...
Okay, so the ocean is big, but if you got a huge boat, then that even a huge ocean is only a few boat lengths, right?
Exactly.
So you just cross very easily. Yeah. Alright. Anything? Moment.
So, two perspectives. The first one is called the change of perspective. Given that what we have around the world, it seems so big. Again, talking about the job, family, and everything is just we have a change of perspective and everything that we have around it, it's much smaller, but we could say insignificant.
Yeah.
So once that, and also the process itself. When you talk about like the ocean of material world, so like passing, like trying to cover it is actually a big task, as explained in the Shastras, but the way we are doing it at our level, because we are insignificant too, the process, helps us as it's being made easier.
Yeah.
So like there's a shrinking aspect, when something is just really hard, it's being made really easy for us. So like if we had to cover an ocean, it's just, a cast, poof, right? So, the process itself is easy in a way, or, simple, but it's being made easier so that,
Yeah. Okay, and who makes it easier? Krishna. Yeah, so this is the main point which you're all getting at, that because when we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, then Krishna helps. And then the most difficult thing becomes easy, because Krishna is all-powerful. Nothing's difficult for him. So if we have Krishna helping us, then even though our obstacles may seem insurmountable, he can easily lift us over them. Even if our journey seems to be so long that we can't even estimate the end of it, he just puts us right there. So everything becomes really easy with Krishna. And I want to read a couple of verses here from the Bhagavad Gita, which talk about this point, how specifically Mohit mentioned this, that the process of bhakti is very special, because only the process of bhakti is really the only process that emphasizes taking shelter of Krishna, taking help from Krishna, and just securing ourselves at his lotus feet and depending on him in this way to deliver us. So in Bhagavad Gita 12:5, Krishna speaks about the impersonalists and their process. He says, "For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied." So this is people who want to be spiritual, but they don't take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, because they don't even think that Krishna has lotus feet, because they don't think that Krishna is a person. So then they don't have that shelter, they don't have that personal help. And Krishna is not like, we read about in Tattva Compound verse that arrangements in the lives of a devotee they're personally orchestrated by the loving hand of Krishna. So when Krishna's loving hand is, in our lives, he's guiding us, then everything becomes easy. But the impersonalists don't have that. They're trying to get down the strength of their own austerity, their own, studies, their meditation, their Ashtanga yoga practices, and it's very difficult. They generally don't make it. But then on the other 12:5. So now on the other hand, I'm going to read 12:6 and 7. Krishna says, "But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death." So here's contrasting these impersonalists. They're trying to deliver themselves, and it's so difficult for them. It's practically impossible for them to get anywhere on that path. But he says, for devotees who just think of me and devote themselves to serving me, I deliver them. They don't have to deliver themselves. I deliver them. And swiftly, he says, I'm the swift deliverer. So I'm going to read a little bit from this purport because it's very exciting and it makes this point really well. Srila Prabhupada writes, "The Supreme Lord herein promises that without delay, he will deliver a pure devotee who is thus engaged from the... He will deliver a pure devotee thus engaged from the ocean of material existence. Those who are advanced in yoga practice can willfully transfer the soul to whatever planet they like by the yoga process, and others take the opportunity in various ways. But as far as the devotee is concerned, it is clearly stated here that the Lord himself takes him. The Lord himself takes him." Back to Godhead. "The devotee does not need to wait to become very experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky." So impersonalists, they take many, many lifetimes, these jnanis, Bahunam Janmanamante Gyanavam Mantapad. After many, many births and deaths of being a jnani, cultivating knowledge and performing austerities and living in a secluded place and meditating, then they might realize, then they come to this point of realizing that Krishna, and then they can actually make some progress. But it says devotee doesn't need to become, we don't need to spend lifetimes, in trying to get experience in spiritual life. We just take shelter of Krishna, and even in an immature stage, he transfers us to the spiritual world. So Prabhupada continues here. The purport of this verse is that a devotee does not need to practice Asanga Yoga in order to transfer his soul to the spiritual planets. The responsibility is taken by the Supreme Lord himself. He clearly states here that he himself becomes the deliverer. A child is completely cared for by his parents, and thus his position is secure. Similarly, a devotee does not need to endeavor to transfer himself by yoga practice to other planets. Rather, the Supreme Lord, by his great mercy, comes at once, riding on his bird carrier Garuda, and at once delivers the devotee from material existence. Although a man who has fallen in the ocean may struggle very hard and may be very expert in swimming, he cannot save himself. But if someone comes and picks him up from the water, then he is easily rescued. Similarly, the Lord picks up the devotee from the material existence. One simply has to practice the easy process of Krishna consciousness and fully engage himself in devotional service. Any intelligent man should always prefer the process of devotional service to all other paths. The purport of this verse is that one should not engage in the different processes of fruitive activity or cultivate knowledge by the mental speculative process. One who is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can attain all the benefits derived from other yoga processes, speculation, rituals, sacrifices, charities, etc. by devotional service. This is the specific benediction of devotional service. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A devotee of the Lord can approach the supreme destination easily and happily. But this destination cannot be approached by any other process of religion. The conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is stated in the 18th chapter, Sarva dharma parityajya mamikam sharanam praja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shishita. One should give up all other processes of self-realization and simply execute devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That will enable one to reach the highest perfection of life. There is no need for one to consider the sinful actions of his past life, because the Supreme Lord fully takes charge of him. Therefore, one should not futilely try to deliver himself in spiritual realization. Let everyone take shelter of the Supreme, Omnipotent Godhead Krishna. That is the highest perfection of life. So, that's the benefit of taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. These pinkish lotus bud, beautiful lotus feet that are like a boat. And Krishna just very easily delivers us from material. We don't need to worry about our past sinful activities. We don't need to worry about any other processes. All we need to do is just think of Krishna, become his devotee, worship him, offer obeisances to him, associate with devotees, chant the holy names, and it's just very easy. So, and pray to the Lord that way. As Lord Chaitanya taught us in that verse, Ai nanda tuja kinkaram patitam ma vishame babam buddho. The same word, Babambudir, is there, Babambu, this ocean. He says, please pick me up from this ocean of repeated birth and death, and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Kripaya tapapada pankaja stita duli sandisham shintaya. It's similar, tapapada pankaja, as padapallavam plavam, the same concept as your lotus feet. The pankaja means a lotus flower. Padapada pankaja. Mohit?
I have a question specifically on Sikhism. There's a saying in it which says Ram Nam Jahase Chade Sutre Par. So it says the same exact thing, that the name of God is like a boat, and once you ride it, you cross the ocean.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when I read more into the religion itself, it talks about the formless being. It also talks about but they use the word Ram.
And which religion are you talking about?
Sikhism.
Sikh, okay.
And also there are other, you could say,
Yeah.
Because the difference, I think, will make the difference.
Yeah, so some impersonalists, they also chant the holy names, but they do it as a process, and some of them even may worship the deity, but they consider that that's kind of like an entry-level spiritual practice for neophytes who need that as a crutch kind of thing. And then, because they can't just meditate on nothing, so they meditate on the sound vibration of the name, or, the deity, and that's kind of like a crutch, which enables them to come to higher levels of spiritual understanding, where they can then give up the chanting of the holy name and the worship of the deity, and just like understand that we're all one, and we're all God, and like that. So that's actually offensive, that's offensive to the holy name, to consider it to be like a ritualistic process, because actually the holy name is Krishna himself. So our chanting of the holy name is not, we're not just using it to come to a higher level of understanding, definitely not to merge into Brahma, or to think that we're going to become God at some point. But we actually understand that Krishna is a person, and he's an eternal person, he's the supreme person, and just as every person has a name, he has a name, he has so many names, and so we call out to that supreme personality of Godhead through his names, and we meditate and we worship the deity form of the Lord also, so that we can, just impress upon our minds the beautiful form of the Lord, and try to remember the Lord and his form and his qualities and his pastimes and his names, and make that the goal of our lives. That we're not, our goal is not to become God. Our goal is to serve God eternally. And, yeah.
It also says that we have to keep on chanting. It's called Sumiran, and so what if they keep chanting the name itself and they have faith, and they're just following just like us, but it's just different. So what kind does it? Because I remember the pastime of Ajamila, and he just kept on calling Narayan.
But the quality of Ajamila's chanting was namabhas, which means that he wasn't committing offenses. So he was chanting Narayan to indicate something else. And when he said Narayan at that very vulnerable, situation at the time of death, then he actually, it's explained that he remembered his previous spiritual practices. So there was an inkling of tiny tinge of devotion there. And so there was a particular quality to it which, brought about the desired result. Whereas, Mayavadis, impersonalists, the Brahmavadis are not so bad, but Mayavadis are just totally offensive. So their chanting of the holy name is offensive. And so they can go on chanting for many lifetimes and never come to the stage of, loving devotion for Krishna. That's why we, put so much emphasis on learning the 10 offenses and the 10 defenses against offensive chanting, because as long as our chanting is offensive, there'll be some result that will be very, very slow and take many lifetimes. And we don't want to stick around in the material world and listen to Bhavambu here for so long and suffering in the ocean of material birth and death. So we have to really try to improve the quality of our chanting, at least to Namabhasa, and then we can make a lot of rapid spiritual advancement.
Thank you so much.
All right. We're a little bit over time.
Last thing.
Okay.
No, it was just a comment. For us, the name and the worshipping of the deity is not just a step off, but it's actually, for us, the means and the ends are the same. We chant, and then, in the spiritual world, we'll be chanting. The Gopas, they chant. The gopis, they chant. Everybody chants in Vrindavan. And, we worship the Lord here, first in his deity form of death. And in the spiritual world, we'll be worshiping him, also, but in the different different way, but with the same mood, of love and everything. So everything is in bhakti is the means and the goal are the same.
Jai, thank you for that, Rani Gopal. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Lord Brahma ki jai, Nandra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Lord Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol. Sharira Vidya Jadindriya Tarika Jive Vele Vishaya Sagare Dharamadi Jayati Lobam Vasatrumati Take Jidaka Dina Samsare Krishna Varadaya Moy Gori Vara Jivata Svarashadana Dilo Bhai Sreyamrita Para Krishna Gunakau Premeda Ko Chaitanya Nitai Jai Nimai Jai Nitai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaura Premanande